I mean, basically the 8 trust indicators reflect the core findings, because, and I could go through them, but basically people were, and this hasn't changed. People assume that news has an agenda because everybody has one, even though journalists try to be unbiased. This is the feeling. And so they wanted news or journalists to say, explain what their agenda is. And so we have the best practices trust indicator, which explains that, I mean, it helps people see that our agenda is to serve the public. And you can see what are the constraints and the guidelines that keep journalists within that public service mission, and how we can avoid conflict of interest. What do we do about, how are we responsive to the public when the public has concerns, or when we need to make a correction. So that's one trust indicator. It's called best practices. They wanted to know more about who the journalist was, and like, why should I trust this person? So we have a journalist expertise or information trust indicator. And there was lots of things that are embedded in that have to do with what people were looking for, including what language does this journalist speak. And then people felt that news was blending with opinion, which it clearly was, and in some ways still is. I think we're doing a little bit better job now, but so labeling. So that's what we do now. All of our sites label news versus opinion versus other kinds of journalism. And all of our news partners share the same definition. So if you go onto a Trust Project News Partner site, you'll, like the Washington Post, or in Canada, CTV News, or the National Observer of Canada, or the Walrus, you'll see a label that says this is opinion, or sometimes news, although that's assumed to be the default, or investigative, and then there'll be a little definition, and you should see pretty close to the same definition everywhere. And then another important one was diverse voices, because people felt like they were hearing just from people at high levels of business and government. So they wanted to learn more about others, and also see more of themselves in the news. So we have both of those things, and so news is expected to be representative, and it's also expected to help us understand one another. And to me, that's really important, because it's a crucial role of news. And I was interested to see that the public really understands that and values it. And in our most recent research, that came up again, and including maybe even especially now around ideology, but also about identity. And there's like 3 or 4 others, but that's the idea. Like each of the 8 responds to a core user need, and then or way of evaluating news. And now what we found was those trust indicators hold up. We've had done research in the interim that show that they are effective, and that in like an A/B study, we get a statistically significant difference in value of the credibility of the site, and also the credibility of the journalists.